We're really glad to have you all here today. Can you hear me in the back? We don't have a mic on. Pretty good. My name's Kay Brown. I teach English here, and Tanya Northerner and I, who is at the back, we are the co-chairs of the Common Reading. And every semester we try to pick a book and invite people across the campus to read it, and then we try to offer some programming that will get people interested in what's going on. So we couldn't think of anything cooler than for the book we're reading this semester is A Companion for Owls, and it's by Morris Manning. And so the name of the book itself brought to mind that we might have some owls to visit on campus. And Micah Perkins is here today. And we put the Raptor Center website. It's on the back, so it wouldn't be flashing up here. But this is the Western Kentucky Raptor Center. And Micah, you are?
Yeah, I'm a board member, volunteer, been involved since about 2008. So this organization's right based here in Davis County. So you can find us on Facebook. We're also on the web. Western Kentucky Raptor Center. If you ever go out to Yellow Creek Park, there's cages near the trains that everybody goes by and doesn't pay attention to. We have birds of prey, hawks, and vultures, and owls and things there for humans.
Cool. Well, so we're going to mix a little bit of poetry with quite a bit of owl today. So we're going to trade off a little bit and read you a little bit from this book of poetry about Daniel Boone. And for those of you who don't know too much about Daniel Boone, he was pretty instrumental in opening Kentucky up to more settlement, but he kind of regretted it afterwards because he liked things as they were in the wild. So we're going to just read a few poems to try to give you a feel for the book, and we'll tell you what page numbers they're on in your book if you'd like to read through them a little bit more. And so Tanya Northerner is going to come and read the first one, Sleeping in the Wilderness.
So the poem I'm going to read is on 27, and as Ms. Brown said, these poems are about Daniel Boone. Most of them are in his voice. So the Kentucky poet Morris Manning that wrote the book studied Boone a lot and his writings and everything he could find about him, and then kind of made some story to go with it. So this one, I think you'll see, kind of reflects this idea that living in the wilderness that much makes you a bit wild yourself. But so he's kind of split. He both appreciates the wild parts of nature and of himself, but he also kind of misses something about the luxuries of home, as he calls it. So, sleeping in the wilderness. No matter how well you dress the hide, a buffalo rug will always smell like buffalo. It is a rank odor and wild, charged with old glands and cud, and the memory of running 10 winters, the last 2 blind. So you take your bed in this way, raking dry leaves into a gravel-sized mound beneath you, pulling the mossy cloak upon you, and you spit out the last bitter cinders from your fire, and submerge your head, feeling the dank fur on your face. And you try to breathe. What good are the dim stars on such nights? They only make heaven seem colder and farther away. So you rekindle the dream about Rebecca, in which the two of you are resting in the shade of a sycamore, and you skip a rock for her across the river. And as you prepare to skip another, she grabs your rough hand and puts it in her hair. Then she lays her generous bones next to yours. In the morning, you wrap the rug around you, check your powder, rub some ashes on your teeth, and go to the creek, where you wash all traces of night from your face. You walk until walking warms you. Then you fold the rug and lash it to your horse, and you keep going to the next blue lick and the next, the taste of salt already on your tongue, a precious grain of civilization clinging to your brutal frame like a pocket watch or a lock of hair. But you are looking for an elk or a bear, sniffing the air for musk. The other one I'm going to read is called Born Again. It's on page 18. And this poem is roughly an allusion to kind of a revival movement that was going across the populated parts of America at the time, the coastal areas as well as the sort of frontier, which is including Kentucky. But it's also about, Boone the character of Boone that Manning has created is really, he's come from a very conservative religious background, but here he's spent all this time kind of by himself in the wilderness, and as I've talked to my students about, that gives you a lot of time to think about everything, especially the big questions about nature and God and human nature and all of that. So I think this poem is one of several in the book that kind of looks at what Boone might be thinking about the big pictures and God and how that may change from his very structured background. Born again. The darkest place I've ever been did not require a name. It seemed to be a gathering place of the ends of the world, the bottom of a hollow between two ridges, sunk like a stone. The water was surely old, the dregs of some ancient sea, but purified by time, like a man made better by his years, his old hurts absorbed into his soul, his losses like a spring in his breast. That deep baptismal trough, my head immersed in a blacksmith's forge, my eyes reflecting firefly flickers. O nameless beauty below the stars, O figure of a man descending, I saw myself, an object of decay, no speech, no sleep, a speck of weightless seeing stuck in the eye of ancient order. Mind you, not a vision of the netherworld or even of death. I was like a seed, a vision of a man who had fallen into a second womb, the cliffs above me stretching like taut thighs of a woman giving birth.
Think about a lot of different birds. There's 10,000 species of birds, but owls are somewhat different as we think. As you think of a bird, you don't think of that round face that humans have, but owls have that. But it's actually made by their feathers. This one is a red-tailed hawk, which is not an owl, and this one actually is an owl. But we don't really see that large beak on owls because they have the whole huge face of the feathers. And I think owls just in general, we as humans really relate to those birds because they almost have like human-like faces versus like a cardinal or a dove or a pigeon or a sparrow. But you pluck all those feathers off its head, which you're not advised to do or whatever, but this is what's going to be there. These are skull replicas. So this is an owl, it's a great horned owl, and this is a red-tailed hawk. You can kind of see the similarities of these two, but they're actually, the groups are not closely related to each other. The falcons, the eagles, and the hawks are of our group, and the owls are in their own group. And if you look here as well, they've got the bones around the eyes. All birds really focus on vision, and they got these rings, the bones around the eyes. All birds have those. Some are more pronounced than others. They're called sclerotic rings. So to provide support for that eye. So if we look at humans in general, about 5% of our own head and skull areas, about 5% is the eye. Birds and especially owls up to 70%. So an incredible massive space. So if I had like the owl's eyes ratio from eyes to head like an owl would, I'd have basically softballs right in my head right now. Look very strange, but I could see very well just as we look at it. So as we look at owls just in general, there's 10,000 species of birds. There's about 200, which owls of course are birds, 240 species of owls, and they've conquered and been basically every continent except Antarctica. Not a lot of prey for them to eat there. There are birds on Antarctica, but they are not owls. So I'm going to show you 3 birds today. The last one, hopefully he cooperates. Let's save him for last. All these birds, you can find them in Davis County, western Kentucky, southern Indiana, basically the eastern United States. This one's a real little guy, maybe a little young, but he's not. He'll get a little bit bigger to be an adult. He really doesn't want to sit on my gloved hand, but we'll see how he does. His name is actually Patch. I'm not sure about all their injuries, but usually they are from collisions, getting hit by a car, or running into a window. So the eye that is closest to me is damaged, but you can definitely see, when you think about this bird versus a cardinal or a dove or whatever, it's got that flat face that we do. We really can kind of relate to that. So his name is Patch because the eye closest to me is damaged, and he has that flat-looking face in general, but if all those feathers were gone, he'd have that more, pronounced rostrum and beak in a sense. Kind of looking up there, so he's a little bit smaller than an adult, but he's not going to get a lot bigger than this. Yeah, sorry, he's an eastern screech owl. And they don't screech actually too much, but the sound that they make is like a horse's whinny. It goes. The thing that makes usually the screech is often a barn owl. Other owls can make some screeches, but a barn owl, which is white, really makes a really loud screech. Sounds like a woman being murdered in a sense. So a lot of those weird sounds we hear at night, we think there's really large animals, and they're actually not very big. So his left eye, which is further away, is kind of squint a little bit. Not necessarily because it's light, but this one, other screech owls I've worked with usually have their eyes open a little bit wider. Just in general, he almost looks like a Furby. Looks like a little robot. Doesn't even look alive. Keeps looking at me in a sense. But those owls, remember, the eyes are so big, they take up such an incredible amount of their brain case in that area, there's no room for eye muscles. So as I do kids programs and stuff, as you're sitting there, leave your head still, move your eyes. You have muscles to move those eyes. Owls do not have that. Those eyes are stuck right in their head. There's no room for eye muscles, so they must move their head. So they've got a good number of vertebrae in their neck, and they can move their head basically 3/4 of a circle, 270 degrees.
How old is he?
So he might be from actually this year based on size.
You should not try this at home.
Right, yes. Yeah, I'm a member, and basically, they're the Western Kentucky Raptor Center. You get on our Facebook page and actually also on our website. You're interested in becoming volunteers. But if you go that route, it is kind of a commitment. We kind of start and do different things, clean up after birds, but it's very rewarding. There's no organizations that are set to take care of these things. Like, it's not the government's responsibility or individuals. These nonprofit organizations have to set up to do this. Because otherwise you just let nature take its course. And it's a little difficult when we've actually changed this landscape and put up a lot of buildings and cars and almost get hit by cars. Is that really nature taking its course or not? So you think about, in general, we've got to basically provide, some sort of support for these guys. So he's an eastern screech owl. He'll eat small little rodents. He'll eat insects as well. They'll actually make little cavities, they'll use cavities in trees to actually make their nest. They're not going to be making those cavities compared to some other birds. So if you look, he's got his 2 toes forward. Do you have a question?
Yeah, will his eye get better or don't you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's probably a collision. Most things are like hitting by cars or hitting windows. So just in general, you ever sit in your house and you hear something thump right against the window? It could be some sort of bird. It sees that reflection. Say, well, it doesn't watch where it's going. Many of you may not admit, but who's ever walked into a screen door that they thought was open was actually closed? Imagine if you're flying into that screen door at 30 miles an hour and you only weigh ounces. You're often going to die or be stunned.
Do you have any way of knowing if his eye will get better?
On that one I don't believe so. That what they do, they give it some time and working with a vet. So we have vets that work with us kind of pro bono to provide some of their, expertise. And, if they, can basically function with that one eye, we can use them for education. So most birds that we work with, we try to rehabilitate and actually getting them back to the wild so they can go on their own. But some, if they have too severe of a head injury, eye injury, or wing, we keep them there at the Raptor Center for educational purposes. Okay?
How old is he?
He's maybe this year. I'm not exactly sure. I got to talk to some of the other volunteers that if he was, based on size, he's pretty small, so he may, been hatched this spring. I need to get a little more information on that end. So they have ears, the inner ear, but they don't have this fleshy thing out here. They got feathers. Those things on the top look like horns. They look like ears. They're just there to kind of, provide support, show his expression, happy, sad, things like that. So owls really interesting. They're more related, probably closer to other things we call nightjars. A nightjar is a whippoorwill. If you're ever out in the woods and you hear a whippoorwill, a very loud bird, they're related to, whippoorwills are also related to nighthawks, which are a little different. If you ever play tennis late at night and you see these birds sweeping around the lights of the tennis courts, making this like peent sound, it's kind of strange. So he's really interesting.